All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the September meeting of the Zoning Preservation and Development Committee for ANC 1B. Let me quickly share my screen. Okay. I know that there are probably still some of our committee members who are joining us, but we do have um, some meaty things to talk about today, and also a few folks who need to leave early. So I want to get us going. So I'm going to get us started with some roll call, and I'll update this as needed as folks jump in. Um, all right. I'm here. Commissioner Kensek. And if you could, as we're doing this, if you could unmute yourself and say yes or no, that would be great, just because I can't see you. Jason told me he was not going to be able to make it today. Karen Brueggemann. Frank Chauvin.
Here.
Fabulous, thank you. Karen Gall. I know she's planning to come, so I'm assuming she's just running late. Simon Handelman. Joel Heisey.
I'm here, but
Fabulous.
you keep cutting in and out. Is that me or is it you?
It could be me. If I am cutting in and out, can somebody else confirm or deny?
I'm hearing you fine on my end.
I hear you fine.
Oh,
Okay.
so
Oh, and there you are, Karen. So let me say yes.
keeps rebooting
Um,
itself.
yeah, I think you're cutting in and out for us too, Joel. So maybe it might be on your end. Nyanyi?
I am here. I said I wouldn't be here, but I managed
Yes,
to carve out some time for this thrilling meeting. So
it's
I
very
am here.
it's very nice of you to join us. Patrick.
Here.
Fabulous. Daniel Kramer. Alex Smith.
Here.
And Bruce Flippins. Okay. So we've done roll call, we've done welcome. I just want to quickly go over our agenda because there's been a few updates to the order, but also there's a few things that we're not going to be talking about today. So we're going to start with hearing from Commissioner Barrio on the resolution that he's written regarding the comprehensive plan. We reviewed this last month as well, just as a reminder. We will then hear from Howard University, who's going to share their final plans for the Howard University Hospital site. And then I have some updates at the end regarding DOB's response to ZPD and our information requests. We are not going to be hearing from 1515 U Street regarding their special exemption. They are planning to come in October. And then we also are not going to be hearing from Councilmember Nadeau's office regarding TOPA. We just were not able to make some schedules work, and so we're going to postpone that as well. All right.
Christian, before you start, I know I keep butting in and give you technical information
Yes.
here, but you did a roll call, but you didn't say we have a quorum to officially opening the meeting. So just
Oh, we do have a quorum, and so we can officially open the meeting. Thanks, Patrick. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and then I do have the Commissioner Barrio's resolution. So I'm going to share that. But Commissioner Barrio, why don't you get us started? And we can go from there. And so actually, let me do a little preamble. Since we've already discussed this and because we have some folks who need to leave early, I'm hoping that we can keep comments brief and also, or at least pithy, and then also stick to the content of the resolution, just because I want to make sure that if we want to vote on this, that everybody who's interested is able to do that. So I appreciate all of your witty and pithy comments in advance, and thank you for your patience. All right, onwards.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, I wanted to first off say thank you to those who were at the last meeting and stayed late to chat about this. It was a really interesting discussion. I got a lot of comments from folks that I think were really helpful, and I've been doing some work over the past month to try to improve and revise the resolution in some areas. Um, you know, I would like to say that, I'm bringing it here before you, and I'm hoping to get your thoughts on this latest version. I've made the resolution more targeted, specifically trying to address some of the concerns that were brought up. Just to start again, for maybe those who weren't on the last meeting, or just a brief refresher, DC has a huge shortage of housing right now. And so we need to use all the tools in our tool belt, I think, in order to address this sort of housing crisis and affordability crisis in the district. One of the tools we have is to build starter homes through gentle density in areas of DC that are currently, zoned or restricted to single family detached homes in very large lots. I was just looking at the current zoning standards, and I believe, yeah, in R1 zones, it was yeah, in R1A zones right now, the minimum lot size is 7,500 square feet, which is quite large and means that you can only build one house on 7,500 square feet, which means you can't build many houses and means that there's a shortage of housing in those areas. There's a lot of demand to live in those areas, and not many people can live there right now. And that puts pressure on the rest of DC's housing market and makes houses all across the district more unaffordable. So, the resolution that I'm proposing is not a new idea. This is how DC developed over the course of the 19th and 20th century, and it's why we have these really beautiful, vibrant, family-friendly neighborhoods in Ward 1 and in ANC 1B in particular, with our beautiful townhomes, which are dense but also family-sized and have lots of bedrooms and allow people to start families in them. So, the last thing I wanted to say before we dive into comments and questions is that the resolution, these ANC resolutions, they can include certain policies, but they are not policy documents themselves. They help outline our vision, our values, and our ideas for how we can make that vision a reality. The comprehensive plan, which is what we're trying to influence here, is also, a high-level strategic planning document that the Office of Planning will ultimately interpret and implement and figure out all of the sort of nitty-gritty rules that need to be added, or sort of how these various evaluations and permitting will be done. So, the resolution doesn't need to be exhaustive, and we shouldn't worry that, someone might use a loophole from our language to, do something that is sort of objectively bad. That's sort of how the Office of Planning will choose to interpret our resolution, sending a signal that this is what we want to see. So I can get into the specifics of the resolution in terms of what I've changed, if that's helpful, or if folks had a chance to review it. I'm also happy to answer questions and comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think it might be helpful to do a really quick overview of
Sure.
what you've changed versus from the original one, and then I see Frank, you have your hand up. I think
Yeah.
just that would be a helpful orientation.
I think that's fair. I didn't want to take up too much time, but I think it is a good use of our time. I agree. Yeah, so I changed the number of units that would be allowed by right from 8 units to 6 units. So I brought that number down some in response to some of the feedback I got. I also added in some provisions around ADUs. One of the big reasons why we don't have a lot of ADU construction in DC and why it is not creating housing opportunities for, families and people that are trying to live on their own is that there are certain very burdensome owner occupancy requirements that basically make it very difficult to actually rent out that ADU to someone looking for housing. So I added some language there. I also added sorry, I'm just looking for it here. Yeah, a minimum lot size of 1,200 square feet. So I know that folks were concerned about having no minimum lot size. And so I think that 1,200 square feet is a fair number that I believe has been implemented in other places like, I want to say, Houston. In addition, I added some additional language about setbacks. I know that folks were concerned about removing front setbacks, and I added in some language about, how we should modify setback requirements to both support gentle density while preserving neighborhood character. I think there's a way that we can balance this and we can get the best of both worlds. And then I changed the shot clock for permitting to not apply to all housing in DC, but I'm really trying to focus on this 6 units or subdividing lots in order to build things like townhomes. That's what I'm really focused on here and trying to streamline that process so that it can happen quickly. Yeah, those were the changes. I believe that covers all the changes I made.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, why don't we open it up for committee member questions? So I will ask Frank for you to go first since you have your hand up, and then we can go from there.
Yes, I have a few questions for Commissioner. First, so I see you've reduced it to 6 units by right, but isn't there sort of a great chasm here of applicability? I mean, how many people, how many folks are going to want to in the residential zones where 1 unit by right is allowed, RF1 zones? To have 6 units next to them. I don't know that it's going to be overly popular, and I don't know that I can't sit here tonight and say that I support 6 units next to me. I think there needs to be a gradation and a better analysis and review of the varying structures that exist in zoning. I'm sorry, the different classifications, like a list of 5 or 6 of the major ones that, like, is there 6 next to a residential 1 unit lot? Would that be allowable, preferable? I mean, I'd like to see it. If we double it, that's brilliant, right? I wouldn't mind 2 units next to me. Actually, there is by right in an RF1 zone, 2 units. But there's, maybe it's 3 units in an RF1 zone. I think there needs to be a better survey of where exactly in which zones we might allow for 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And so I can't support it unless I see a better gradation that would delineate and review the various existing zoning areas and what might be sensible and thoughtful there. So that's my first comment. Secondly, there is throughout the document a sense that a starter home has anything to do with this, and I find it to be a leap of faith that any of these will, by definition, be starter homes. Because let me tell you, I mean, maybe my home is worth $1 million. I don't know, but a block away, I have 2 condos, both worth $1.3 million in the same size house that I have. So, I don't think we're creating by definition a starter home. So I find it to be utilized throughout the document in a way that I'm not there with it, that this at all is going to create any starter home. So those are my 2 questions. But thank you for bringing a better form, sort of an update to us tonight. This is 100% better than the last one. And then my last one is my last question is there a sense that you'll come back to the table with additional edits, or what's the expectation this evening? Because I didn't hear that.
Thanks. So I can just try to address some of the topics you brought up. So in terms of the delineation of number of units, I think it is important to keep in mind that I think it is important to keep in mind that the neighborhoods we currently live in, I would consider, Frank, that you actually live next to many more than 6 units. You live in a block of townhomes. And so you are actually in an attached structure that is connected to, I don't know how many homes are on your block, but let's say 12. So I think that 6 sounds like a lot, but I think that actually we live in neighborhoods that look like what I'm sort of proposing here in terms of having townhomes. The other thing I'll say is that, in many places there are duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, And what I'm saying is that we would allow up to 6 units. Not every single place would have 6 units. You'd have to look at what does the lot provide, how much space is there. The Office of Planning would review in some sense, to see if there's some other concern. I'm not saying that we should eliminate all front setbacks as well. So I think that there are ways in which this gentle density can be done in such a way that is not so jarring or so out of place in the neighborhood. But I do think it's important to say at the same time that we need to see what people can build and we need to see what's possible. And I was just driving around in a lot of these neighborhoods because I was going to some estate sales in Upper Northwest, which were really great. It's always interesting to see these houses and to see what people have out on display. But a lot of these houses, some of them you can see are much smaller and they're on small lots, but a lot of them are houses that are on very large spaces that are in the district, that are near, sometimes in some cases near amenities, and that the highest and best use of that land is probably not to have one home there, that we can actually have more people living there in a way that's really beneficial to the community and to the district, and that is more affordable. So I think that kind of transitions into what you were saying about starter homes. I think starter home is a relative term. I hear that. I'm not under any illusion that these, homes that might be created, suddenly that duplex or that townhome is going to be, affordable for somebody making 30% AMI, in the district. So 30% of, area median income. But at the same time, there's a lot of research showing that if you have smaller homes on smaller lots, or you have townhomes, that those homes are significantly less expensive than the homes in that existing neighborhood. So I think that these are more attainable starter homes for people. And I also think they open up other opportunities throughout the housing market. So yeah, that's what I'll say.
So my other question, I'm sorry, what's the expectation this evening? Will you be going back to the drawing board? Are you expecting a motion?
So right now I'm just trying to gather feedback and hear what you guys think.
So you're continuing to seek community input from us and other locations.
I mean, yeah, I want to hear what you all think.
Thank you.
Okay, I know, I just want to check. I know, Joel, you have to leave early. I'm wondering if you have any comments that you'd like to add before we hit the 7 o'clock mark.
Well, I saw you had circulated, what comments that I put in, and I mean, I think that's right. I mean, generally, I mean, you're trying to do something that can't be done in this format. I mean, a statement of principles is one thing, and the goal of trying to increase housing is other. But to put in specifics, like Ward 3 is not going to have somebody on their 7,000 square foot lot is not going to have 6 units next to them.
Why? I'm just curious why.
They will have lawyers tie you up forever.
Oh, I'm sure they'll try, but I think that's why we need to. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm just saying I think that's why we need to do this. Yeah. No, please.
Make your points. Let me finish.
No, of course.
The other thing is just from kind of a urban planning, kind of design planning things, is not every neighborhood is meant to be a high density neighborhood, and especially high density next to very low density in the adjoining lot. I mean, what you're proposing here might be good for like a suburban subdivision, but the city is so diverse that this level of specificity without details is almost meaningless. I mean, it's going to create havoc everywhere. And just from a design, you don't necessarily, I'd love to see more than just, restrictive zoning up in Ward 3. But saying you can build 6 units next to a 10,000 square foot house, you could do it in a building, but it's not going to do it on a 1,200 square foot lot. So I mean, it has to look at those kind of trade-offs. You can't say 1,200 square foot lots and then any number of structures on a large lot. There has to be some kind of guidance for it. Like similarly in the RF1, which currently is you have to have 900 square feet per unit. And something like that is a reasonable guideline. If you have 5,000 square feet, sure, up in an RA1 zone, why not allow more units? But just to be so broad to say this minimum lot size anywhere in the city and this number of units anywhere, I mean, what's to say you can't have 6 units on a 1,200 square foot lot? That's kind of what this is leading to. And that's why the level of specificity here with these things is against what you're really trying to lay out is a series of goals or some principles. So you're conflating those two, and then just down in the bottom, the whole thing about throwing in, making opportunities for different races and stuff. I mean, that's a social, I don't want to say engineering, a social goal versus you're going through planning goals and all the others. So, I mean, it's admirable, but it's out of place with what's being done here. That might be a result, but it shouldn't be something that's, specifically here. Some of the others, again, I mean, they're just small scale subdivision. I mean, what the hell is that? You can't just say that. It's going to lead to all kind of headaches. Again, with the removing rear and side setbacks. I don't know if any residential place wants 100% lot occupancy. It's those kind of things are kind of the results of what this would be. And it's this reframing it as objectives and goals, I think, is much better and much more achievable than trying to specifically write a regulation in this kind of a document. That's the kind of thing that gets worked out after you look at the different variety and the different circumstances in every lot. And that's the problem with real estate and building. There are no two lots the same. So it's hard to uniformly make generalizations. So it has to be done very carefully as what you're going to do. And you have to have qualifiers in it so it doesn't run amok. That's my main concern. I don't object with the principles and what's trying to be done, but I think we're saying the following provisions, I think, are too specific to be useful. Office of Planning will just reject them out of hand because of the nature of the conflicts that they create among themselves, and forget the social. You have, at some point, this has to go through council or pass. And Ward 1's lawyers may not be able to do much once these are passed, but getting it passed, they're going to be there. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, in principle, I love it. I love the idea. This in exclusive zoning, I think is not a good thing, but I think there has to be kind of a more thoughtful approach to it. That, as what you're saying with this document. So if you have any questions or rebuttal, I have a few minutes here if you want to, say anything.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that perspective and that feedback. I think that you're right. With these resolutions, it is a balance between how specific do we get, how much do we outline, values, principles, vision, ideas that we want in order to accomplish, our vision. I do think, though, that I don't see this as causing havoc. I do see that there will be people opposed to this, but I think that we need to address that head on. And I think that, what I'm proposing here is actually, not, it is relatively modest in terms of how the district has built and how the district has evolved and built over time. So I hear you, but I also feel that, that yes, I do think that there should be townhomes sometimes next to mansions. And I do think that, neighborhoods need to change to some extent. And that, that doesn't mean that we're going to build a skyscraper somewhere. That's not at all what I'm proposing. But, we already live in neighborhoods that have far more than 6 units with us. So I don't see this as causing havoc. I see this as a way of saying these are our ideas and our vision, and these are some real ways. Because I think that if we aren't specific on some things, then it won't actually happen. And so I don't want to write an exhaustive list of everything. possible. And you're right, I'm not a planner, so I can't write every detail in here, nor should I. I think that's the Office of Planning's job. But I do think it's important to say that we want to establish as a baseline that people are able to build housing in the district that is more affordable, that is denser, gently denser, and that does something real to address the housing shortage that we have. So
Yeah,
those are my thoughts.
okay, and like you just said, that last part, that's what really should be the focus of the resolution. When you get into the others, I mean, developers are going to take this minimum lot size and 6 units and run with it. I mean, and Patrick's going to go on a soapbox about all the pop-ups that went up in Columbia Heights. I mean, part of the reason we have some of the restrictive things now is because people are taking 2-story townhomes, adding a 40-foot addition on top of them. And, it's horrendous from an urban design standpoint and a livability, point of view. You can be done well, but then you have to have guidelines and design issues with it. Otherwise, it's going to be run amok, is what I'm afraid. So I'll leave it at that. Like I said, this other meeting, I still have to figure out how to get into it, and but I'll try to continue watching this one as much as I can.
Of course, and thank you for the feedback. I do really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Joel. I think next is Karen.
Good evening, gentlemen. My question to you, Francois, is real. Is a little bit briefer than everyone else's.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for affordable housing, as you know. I'm really a big advocate on affordable housing, but it's the acquisition of the space, especially in these locations that you have mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Have you did some research on with DEMPED's space acquisitions in regards to whether or not any of this space how will DC are you proposing that
Mm-hmm.
DC do it through eminent domain or acquiring spaces that meets a particular lottage that DC will propose those particular spaces to be utilized for additional housing, and then they would acquire it through eminent domain, or would they acquire it through purchasing those particular properties and dividing the properties up? I'm just curious as to how that would play out, because I think that that this is a idea that could be utilized if there's a plan, as Joel was mentioning, a plan that of action that is working within the entire process of making changes. But I just was wondering, have you spoke to the have you worked with how they will acquire the properties that you are proposing to be used in these particular spaces? That's my only question, but thank you. If you can answer
Thanks.
that, I appreciate it.
So the resolution, I think, is focused on homeowners and owners of the property and the land choosing to do this on their own. So I don't think DEMPED would be directly involved necessarily in these conversions. I think that it would be more people who own a home and they want to turn it into a duplex, or they want to build an ADU in their backyard, and use their own money or raise their own funding, potentially through the city or from somewhere else. I've heard some interesting proposals about local governments helping with financing for building things like ADUs. But the resolution is really more focused on how do we, change the regulations that exist currently just to make it possible. So, that's the focus. So it wouldn't be DC using eminent domain or anything like that. It would be, people deciding that, there's an opportunity here for me to, build more housing, to make something for myself, and that can help, that can help everybody.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answers.
Well, it semi answered it, but
Mhm.
since you said you put the onus on actual homeowners and those who already have in their aspirations to try to build upon their own lots. I mean, that gave some idea. I just wanted to know because you're looking at the entire plot of land that DC has, and what portions of it outside of Ward 3 that you identified were going to be utilized for these new buildups. And so I was just curious as to
Yeah.
how was that space going to be attained. And
So, I mean, it's really wherever it's sort of financially feasible to build. So it's not limited to just some places, it would be possible for everyone. But, in order to make the investment that might be needed. And so, it could be homeowners, property owners, people who, want to purchase some land and then develop it, in a residential area. Um, so yeah, it's not limited, but it would, you know, I think the projections are that it would happen in areas that are, the land is really expensive there. And so you can build something there, or the land is just somewhat, I mean, land is expensive throughout a lot of DC. So there are opportunities for this, but in a lot of places there's already townhomes or there's already apartments or there's already, fourplexes or something like that in DC. So this would only apply to those areas that aren't that don't already have that level of density, I guess. And not that it wouldn't apply, but the changes would be seen in those areas, I guess.
so it's not trying to add more population on top of a fourplex or you're not
Mhm.
trying to build up a home upwards and utilizing additional airspace. You're trying to go to places that are vacant with no properties on those locations and use that as a space to create these affordable houses. Is that what you're saying?
In some cases, but in other cases, there might be an existing home there that's very old, that's not in a historic district. And it might make sense to knock down that home and then build a duplex on it. So now you have two separate entrances to the house. Or you have another home where you might want to, right now it's for one single family, but you can do some building on it like an addition or restructuring the walls inside, and that can make it a duplex. Or you just have, a house right now and someone has a really large backyard and they want to build a smaller, ADU, so just a small little house back there, a little backyard cottage, like that's, 800 square feet or something like that for their grandmother to live in or for their kids to live in or to rent to somebody else who, is just starting out. So I think that's sort of some examples of what can happen.
I was just picturing that you want to have a series of
Mhm.
tiny homes all over in various areas of DC. That's what I was
Mhm.
just sort of
That could
trying to
happen as well. Yeah, I mean, you could have a lot, and then you could build eight tiny homes, or sorry, eight. We're saying six, so six tiny homes on it potentially. So that is something that, like, my cousin is actually doing that in North Carolina right now. He bought a piece of land with an old house on it. He removed the old house, and now he's building, I believe, like six, like 800, 750 square foot homes. So, and those are going to be much cheaper than the house that was there beforehand. And now you can have a lot more people living on that land too. So, like he's doing that right now in North Carolina. I'm hopeful that things like that could potentially happen in DC
Yeah,
or.
I know of the possibility, and because like you're saying, I'm seeing that
Mhm.
as well
Yeah,
happen
yeah,
in a
yeah.
lot of different places in order
Mhm.
to look at housing, and so that people can still have that single family, but it's just not the square footage that
Yeah,
most of
yeah.
the single family places are having. But
Mhm.
I thank you.
Mhm.
That was my question. I didn't, I just and you said your end goal for today is just to get feedback. Am I correct?
I think right now my end goal is to get feedback. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Francois.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, just to clarify, Francois,
Mhm.
the what you're at least with regard regards to 6 units, this recommends that the comprehensive plan enable the ability for private property owners to build up to 6 units on their lot district-wide. It's not necessarily saying here are the specific lots where 6 units should be built.
Yep, exactly.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Just thought I
Yeah.
would.
Hmm.
yeah, that was what my understanding was. But I think Karen, you were asking some really great questions. I just wanted to uh make sure that I understood. Okay, I know we have a bunch of hands, and there's one person in our in from the public who has their hand up. So I'm gonna go to Patrick, and then next on the list is Alex, then Frank, then Nyani, and then we'll go to public comments.
Friends, well, I'm not going to ask a zillion questions because we'll probably get them from somebody else. Just a couple of comments. One, which kind of got answered. I did not get a chance to read through this document because I was out doing stuff and email came in later this afternoon, so I'll take the time to read it. But
Sorry about that. Yeah.
I will say, just as a oversight of what I have been able to see,
Hmm.
you're using a lot of acronyms, and I think you need to take the time to put them in parentheses what they stand, like in this one that I'm seeing on the screen right now, where it says including a majority of white, black, and POC residents. I have no idea what a POC is. Never heard of that before. So
Hmm.
that would be helpful. And then on the first line of the very first one, you talk about a report, but you don't say what the report is. So I think you should just go through and make sure where you're denoting. Yes, it says with a 2022 study. What's
Oh, I think I have a link there to a URL, but yeah, I can make that a real,
I just think if
formal
it,
citation.
if you're printing this out and somebody is going to read it on a paper, at least if it says what the study is,
Yeah.
find it. It's just helpful. So
I think
Yeah, I don't know why it's not
it's there as
popular.
a footnote, and for some
Yeah.
reason, Patrick, it's not showing up unless I click on the footnote. So that is just a formatting thing. But Francois did link the study. It just is
okay, all
not
right.
showing up for some reason.
I'm just going by, like I said, I haven't really looked through the whole document. So those are my two comments.
No, that's those are good comments, and I think I can. Yeah, I think it's good to cite your sources and to write out your acronyms. So I'll be sure to do that.
All right, Alex, you're up next.
Yeah, just a comment that I think this is really exciting and I think is definitely like seems like it's helping take our city in a good direction, even if it's like small and incremental changes that add up over time to add more to our housing supply, which ultimately will hopefully at least slow the rate at which home prices are increasing. Um, I'm wondering one small question on the setbacks about eliminating setbacks. I'm wondering how that comes into play when we have residential right next to commercial.
Mm.
Um, and
Mhm.
if setbacks, because I think it's one thing to, I live in a row home, love it.
Mm.
I think it's one thing to have neighbors that are other residents, and it's another thing to have neighbors that are commercial businesses potentially producing significantly
Mm.
more noise, especially
Mhm.
given that I don't think our building code has quite caught up around noise isolation. And so that's one quick question there around setbacks. And the second question is, there's a nonprofit called Strong Towns. And I'm wondering if you've been in touch with them or gotten them to look at this because they do a lot of work
Mm.
around kind of like this gentle density that you're talking about that I think they might in other places in the country, and they might be a helpful group to review this.
Yeah, no, those are both good comments. Yes, I have heard of Strong Towns. I've been listening to a couple of their podcasts lately. I have not had them review this yet, but I do think it would be worth reaching out to them. That's a good point. And yeah, I guess I'm sure there's people that are active in DC that are part of it. So, or at least I could email somebody to get them to take a look. But I think that's a good suggestion. And in terms of yeah, commercial and residential, I mean, I think, you know, I I want to defer, I guess, to the Office of Planning to help figure that out. I know that, we have seen with noise in our area that that has been an issue, and I think NATO's bill about trying to have requirements for soundproofing for, those larger multifamily buildings that are near commercial areas seems pretty smart to me from what I know. I think that the area where a lot of this development would be happening would be not on our major corridors or thoroughfares where you have, a lot of noise, you have bars and restaurants. I think most of this would be more in neighborhoods, though it would also be in areas near corridors, further out. So yeah, I don't know necessarily where it would all be, but I think that's a fair concern, I guess. I'm curious, what would you like, how would you think about trying to, resolve that, or what is your vision? I'm curious for the comprehensive plan, because I think that's like another issue the comprehensive plan could weigh in on, is like how to balance residential and commercial, which is, really beautiful thing, but also a challenge.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a beautiful, nicely wrapped up solution.
That's totally fair.
Yeah, I'm just
I didn't mean
wondering.
to throw it back at you too. I was just curious if you had something in mind.
Yeah, no, the first thing that jumps out is like, is there potential like setback requirements when it's residential next to commercial as opposed to residential next to residential?
Mm-hmm.
And that might be a kind of easy fix.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I wonder whether there's an existing code about that or not. Maybe not. I don't know. Um, but definitely something I can look into. And um, yeah, I think with this resolution too, like we've been talking about, there are some, specific ideas, but also a lot of deference, I guess, to OP to figure out what's the best way to make this happen, while keeping some of these core ideas hopefully intact would be the goal for me.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. All right, Nyanyi, you are next.
Great. Let me lower my hand first. Just really first wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Barlow to come here and especially taking in mind kind of everyone's comments about this and coming to this meeting a second time. I know the first one ran really long, so I'm glad that you got the priority on this one and got to go first. So really appreciate you kind of coming and taking notes on some of this. I have mostly comments and not necessarily questions about this proposal. I think it's actually really great. I think even kind of want to touch upon kind of the lot size issue. I am not an urban planner. I am an economist mostly, so I don't know as much as someone like Joel. But I think just because I think taking note of the 1,200 square foot lot size and then the 6 units by right, I feel like a lot of this is also kind of it doesn't mean that other rules don't apply. We're bound by height limits, bound by other restrictions. I think even with a proposal like this, you can't necessarily just build up 6 units in a backyard, even though you have the 6 units by right. It's kind of like a geometry issue at that point. It's like you can't just build it straight up on 1,200 square feet. So I think that even with these issues, I think it's important to think that this is kind of a very broad document, and I really appreciate actually how broad it is that you're not focusing specifically on, say, just Ward 1 or just Ward 2, and especially I think it's really important that you're not letting a place like Ward 3 off the hook. So they can kind of, and I think it's really important that Joel mentions, like, you can lawyer up all you want about this, but I think the idea is that you can do that, but you still can't do anything about it, even with all of the lawyers, guns, and money that you want. So I think that is really important, and I think it's really important that you can kind of with something like this, you can build a small duplex next to a 10,000 square foot, single family house. I'm not an urban planner, but given that, some places like Ward 3 haven't built, and they especially haven't built affordable housing, I think we very much should do something like this and encourage more development in that area, especially something that is affordable, such as duplexes, triplexes, apartment buildings, because these are places that people really want to live in. They have really good schools. They have really good public transit. They often have just like very good facilities. and many people are priced out. And I think that anything that we can kind of use to really unlock density there would be really helpful and make sure that, people who are of, lower incomes can actually live there. One thing I do want to also touch upon is I think it's really important that you suggest that a lot of this is, by right, and a lot of this is making sure that we can actually just kind of do it without going through kind of this very tedious process that we often go through. So I, like many of the people here, I was very enthralled, I would say, by the 1617 U Street development, the fire station down the road. And I sat through 7 4-hour sessions of the, zoning commission just to kind of see what the result was, just so I could kind of have my one comment for about, 3 minutes. And most people, I would say, don't have the time to do that. And most people cannot give their input for that. And that wasn't even for the actual development of the building. That was really just the change the zoning to make sure that we could build an apartment on that piece of land. And I think that opponents of a lot of housing, what they do right now is they just stall a lot of these projects and make sure that they never get built. And I think something like this, in which you ensure that a lot of these kind of, smaller apartment buildings, things that don't actually really, gentle density, things that don't change the neighborhood that much, making sure that they get built. I think that that's really important. So I have, those are kind of my comments. Thank you, Commissioner, for really trying to put this together. Thank you for taking our comments from the first time into account as well.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tony. I know that we have a hand raised from one of our members of the public, so I'm going to ask Mr. Handerhan to. I just gave you the ability to unmute, so you can ask your question.
Christian, it's Matt Fay, actually. Apparently, I have Larry's leftover account from last year, so I will re-register.
I was
as
finally
myself.
going to get to meet Larry Handerhan. It just
I
hasn't
thought the
happened.
name Larry was familiar, but anyway.
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry to disappoint on that regard. Yeah, I think so let me start by saying that the big reason I showed up is I wasn't sure if, well, I'm here for the Howard piece as well, which is in my single member district. But I also wasn't sure if this was a letter you were looking to get support on tonight. And it sounds like you are seeking more feedback, and I'll keep my comments relatively brief. I agree 100% that we have a housing shortage and a housing affordability issue in the district. I am not convinced that the primary driver is zoning. And so one of the things that I will invite, and I'll email you and Christian after this, is a task force from 1B to maybe explore kind of a broader set of drivers for what is limiting the production of housing stock. One of the things that's very much on my mind are the hundreds of thousands of vacant square feet that are across the street from the Howard University campus, just north of our single member district, that would accommodate literally thousands of apartments, within a quarter mile of a major metro station and a lot of different buses. I look at the DC Housing Finance Authority building that sits unused and vacant on a prime corner, and is ripe for development and the creation of housing stock. I look at 1617, which is going to be delayed, I imagine, due to economic conditions, and the Reeves Center redevelopment that is delayed due to economic conditions. And so I kind of look at this and I say, we have an issue with housing stock and affordability, and we have hundreds of thousands of square feet and thousands of apartments that could be built very close to major kind of population areas and major transportation lines that are stalled. And so I look at it and I say, I'd love for us to be able to expand the conversation to include some of those other drivers. And at the same time, I think refine your proposal for additional density. I worry for the folks who are the kind of the experts in zoning. One of the things that I think zoning has gotten right, and there are some things that they've not gotten right, is that they have created kind of very specific rules that help to kind of balance different neighborhoods and different types of development. And I think the idea that Frank had raised about kind of a scaled sort of density might make more sense. But I'd love to be able to explore kind of a broader set of drivers and a broader set of solutions, because I am worried, quite honestly, that we are going to sit here for another 2 years at least, and probably closer to 4, with those hundreds of thousands of square feet not developed. And part of the reason I say that is that there have been, filing after filing by the large developers who are postponing their plans and asking for extensions of their approvals by 2 years. And so they're not going to happen for 2 years. I just think there's something else that we need to explore, and would like to, have 1B do some of that exploration and come back and provide encouragement and championing action, so that we can get more stock built, more neighbors moved in, more opportunities for people to, be a part of the community and in a sustainable way. So those are my comments. No need to comment, and I will follow up with you and Christian and some of the Economic Development Committee members about a joint task force to take forward maybe a broadened view on housing affordability.
Sure. I mean, I don't want to take up too much more time to let the meeting proceed, but thank you, Matt, for the feedback and for the idea. I think a task force would be great, in full support of that. I think like the resolution I have here is not a silver bullet. I don't think there's a silver bullet to DC's housing shortage, unfortunately. It's been a long time in the making. It's going to take a long time to get out. But I do think, if we do have such a task force, we do need to think about all types of housing and really have an all of the above approach, because I think the apartments are super important. I think that thinking about affordable housing is super important. I think thinking about our neighborhoods and having this gentle density is also super important. And, it's not going to fill in the full gap that we have, but, it does seem like you could produce hundreds or really, really thousands of new units over the course of, many years in the district. Through what I'm proposing. So, it can make a dent. It's not going to be everything we need. And I think that, in terms of focusing on 1B too, this resolution it can have an impact on housing affordability in the district across the district. But I think that there are some really interesting things to look at right here in 1B, and adjacent to 1B, in terms of why is certain land not being developed? And I would love to know the answers to that. DC has actually built like 8,000 new units in the past, I want to say 5 years. It's built more actually than Houston more
Yep.
recently, which is kind of incredible. So that's not to say that we're out of the woods or that we're building enough housing, because we're not. But there have been some real successes, but also
There have
how do we
been.
really unlock the rest of that? I think that's a great question, and we're seeing a slowdown in new permits and things like that, possibly due to interest rates or other things that I don't even fully grasp yet, that I would love to learn more about. So,
And
full
I think,
support of a task force.
yeah, I think the only other comment I want to make is that as I look around, and this might apply less to Ward 3, it might apply more to other wards.
Hmm.
When I look around at single family houses, by and large, they are owner occupied. When you get
Hmm.
to 4 and 6 unit buildings, they're almost primarily developer owned and
Hmm.
renter occupied.
Hmm.
And so as part of your goal of creating more ownership opportunities, I think we just have to, again, think about the balance between multifamily is almost entirely owned by and profited by developers. And I would hate for there to be something that inadvertently happens where, folks who have been able to afford a home now are pushed out because there's now a development push to create multifamily that would be developer owned. So just one more layer, but I'll stop. Christian, thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks.
Patrick, you have your hand up.
Now, I just want to make a brief comment to Mr. Larry Hanrahan. You need to be corrected in the fact that the land that's across from Howard University, although it's vacant right now, there are plans for development all along that corridor. I personally have worked with the university to try and push that forward, to get it extracted from the campus plan so that it was developed. And that goes from Barry, where the McDonald's is, all the way down to V Street. that all of them have developers that are working on plans, and a large track of that is going to be housing. So,
Yeah.
not to be
And
mean, but I just want to need to correct the statement you made that there's land sitting undeveloped.
yeah, and Patrick, maybe just to clarify, it is undeveloped. It has been undeveloped, and the developers who have promised to develop it are postponing those plans for 2 years at a minimum. And so I'm not saying that there aren't plans. I do agree with you wholeheartedly that there are plans. What I'm raising is a concern that those plans seem to be delayed, and they're not the only ones, right? When you look at the market at O Street, the development plans there, those have been put on hold for 2 years. And it's a number of different factors. Francois cited a couple of them. But there are other opportunities, and you have been a very, very excellent champion of development in that area. What I'm saying is I'd like for us to continue to champion and to get those apartments built so that we've got the residential spaces available for use.
Um, okay, so unless there are other comments from folks in the audience, which I don't see any, and I think almost everyone who's here is here in the audience is here for Howard. But I'm gonna move us into committee member comments, and I'm actually gonna get us started. I think I really like the updated version of this resolution, and I think if we were voting on it today, I would vote in favor of it. Um, I, you know, there are lots of components in this that I can get behind, but I just think that like at its core, um, legalizing the construction of up to 6 units district per lot district wide, I think it actually speaks a little bit to what you were saying, Matt, earlier about we're seeing this larger scale development not happen because the market is bad. Um, and in this, I'm seeing it happen in my work too. We've seen a lot of developers ask for permit extensions, and we've even seen developers walk away from projects. Um, and uh, we also have seen developers sort of like use the economic situation to sort of push back on some of the community amenities that we would normally be able to get through the development process because of how expensive it is to provide this. So I actually think that this is like a really great way in the meantime to get housing units. And I'm not under any delusion. I don't think Commissioner Barrio is either about the quantity of units that we would get from this. This is not necessarily going to be transformative in the sense that we're not going to get like thousands and thousands of units. But I do also think that it opens up development for the types of units like that where I live in. Like I live in one of these buildings. So I live in a 7 unit infill development on Chapin Street that used to be a single family home and then in 2015 was converted into 7 condos. Um, and so actually I this my house would not be allowed. It would not be by right because there's 7. But that's okay. I'll forgive the limit there. Um, but I think that this is like a really important way to enable the construction of more housing. I don't think that it's like requiring housing to be built. Obviously, that depends on the property owners and developers, and I think it's pretty reasonable to say that in primarily single family areas, it's really unlikely that there's going to be this sort of like huge bump of development happening all at once because all of those buildings are owned by single family homeowners. I would be shocked if many of them were owned by people who didn't live in the unit or who were not related to people who lived in the unit. So I just think that this is like a common sense, low stress, low um, impact way to just like casually get more housing units throughout the city that in a way that doesn't sort of like create huge monstrosities or anything like that. I think I'm especially noticing that there's no height limits here anymore. And also the historic component about historic review you took out, Francois. So I just think that there are some things that would have that I had concerns about that are no longer in this. And I think that it's kind of at its core incentivizing the development of actual infill housing, and that like in an environment where it's really difficult to build large townhomes, or sorry, large multifamily, like multiple of us have pointed out, I do think that this is like it just is. I don't know. It feels like not actually. To a certain extent, I think we might, be making a mountain out of a molehill, in the sense that like I just think that this is is likely to have a really sort of low stress impact on areas throughout the district. Um, but anyway, that's my 2 cents. Uh, I'll stop there. I know I don't usually like add in such a strong opinion on things, but I do really think that this is something that would be really beneficial for the district long term in terms of like our housing production and all that. So I'll stop there. If anyone else has any comments they would like to add, please let me know by raising your hand. And if Francois, if there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, just thank you to everybody for engaging, and yeah, thank you for that, for what you said, Christian. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of next steps, it sounds like Francois, you were here to collect additional feedback. When you have a sense of what your next steps are, please reach out and let me know, and I'll communicate that to the committee, if appropriate. I do think that what Commissioner Fay suggested is a great idea, and I'm happy for that to sort of take part in, I think it seems like it overlaps a little bit with ZPD, but also with the Economic Development Committee. And so I'm sure that we'll follow up with him after that. But I think otherwise, unless other committee members have anything else to add, I think we can move on to Howard. Okay.
Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for putting me at the top of the
Sure.
agenda. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Okay. Oop. All right, Teresa, I'm actually going to make you a panelist. And then I'm going to promote Mr. Neek Williams. And then please let me know if there's anyone else I should be promoting. And Cynthia. Okay. Okay, so I think I've sent all of the appropriate panelist promotions. There we go. Fabulous. All right, so I think, Teresa, you should be able to share your screen, but let me know if you are not able to, and otherwise take it away.
Well, thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Teresa Edmondson, Manager, Community Association at Howard University in the Office of External Affairs. And I am here with my Assistant Vice President for Planning and Architecture, Derek Williams, who will be needing the screen sharing ability, and Cynthia Giordano, who is our counsel. So you can promote Derek. There he is. Yeah. And here's the thing that's different is you all did give us a letter of support, and for our last iteration, which was the hybrid model. We are here with the final plans for our new hospital, hopefully breaking ground in January. And now Derek will take it away.
You should be able to share your screen, but let me know if not.
It says disabled.
Okay.
You
well,
need to make me a co-host in Zoom, and then I'll seed it back to you when I'm done. Sometimes that. Oh, there we go.
Fabulous. Okay.
Should I get the right? Too many windows open. Sorry about that. All right, you guys seeing my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So I think the update today is really just to go through the presentation that was provided to LPCA and highlight the differences between the hybrid scheme and, headline, a new standalone hospital that we were able to effectively fit all of the program uses into a smaller footprint. And then also touch on access to the site during development. So running through it, and obviously with brevity in mind, unless there are questions, but please feel free to chime in and I'll rely on our gracious MC to corral the questions for me. But this is the previous plan. I'm pretty sure most of the commissioners and most of the constituents should be familiar because we've presented this several times. But the old concept, as you remember, was to include a new tower here, a pavilion, and then kind of bridge into and plug into the existing hospital and medical office building to the rear. So that had its various implications in terms of parking and site circulation, but it largely placed an expanded emergency department inside the existing Howard University Hospital, which required service and access. And so again, jumping through that, we went through various iterations of how that would actually work in terms of the relationship to the townhomes and the U Street alley to the rear, which were of primary concern, as well as a number of other things that were brought up in the scheme of the MOA that was signed between the university and the community. And so resultant from our processes, I also want to highlight the proactive nature of all of the various dialogues that we had to that effect, which really looked forward towards a lot of different eventualities, right? So again, we don't think that a lot of work needed to be done on the MOA to effectuate any changes here. It was actually pretty fortuitous because we spent so much time on the front end dealing with these sorts of eventualities. So again, most of the tenets and thoughts that the MOA memorialized would hold true in this scenario. So I want to say that on the front end. But jumping into it, as you can see, there's a new standalone hospital in which the emergency department moves from its prior location inside of the existing edifice of the hospital into all new square footage, which takes a much larger frontage along Georgia Avenue, but a larger portion of that ground floor. So I'll get to it in a moment, but most of the other accoutrements in terms of the ambulance access and circulation remain primarily the same. The real headline is that the existing hospital and complex ultimately will be able to be torn down. So again, more semantics about and visual semantics surrounding how the various spaces lay out inside the previous scheme, and again, how all those ground floor uses in particular were all consolidated along the Georgia Avenue corridor. So, again, the primary access is all from Georgia in this iteration. It allows for the future demolition of the tower's building, and again, doesn't place any active uses along the U Street alley. There's an ambulance bay that exists in the previous iteration and in this one that would basically be completely bunkerized, for lack of a better term, and would have a head in and head out to and from Georgia Avenue. The previous iteration actually had the emergency department walk-in entrance and drive-up entrance directly behind the U Street alley, which was inconvenient, for a lot of the residents here, but was a necessary solution for us to solve the access issue. So that being shifted over closer to Georgia Avenue means that the emergency department will actually be able to access directly off the street with a lay-by. It'll provide more direct access to the street, but also will minimize the impact on the U Street alley. So that's an important aspect to mention. But in addition, this does give us more flexibility for future development in this area once that moves ahead and the existing hospital and its associated buildings are able to be raised. So speaking to that, the university plans to construct a standalone hospital in the zone that's sort of in this peach color right here. Future development sites are illustrated here in yellow, and then there will actually be a buffer, as we're calling it, to hold for future hospital development, but also to have a surface parking lot in the interim that is directly adjacent to the standalone hospital, with appropriate buffers per the MOA from adjacent incompatible uses that we defined in the agreement with Detroit Park. So again, this kind of just highlights the potential zones for new development, as well as a land bank, as we might call it, that we hold for the development of future beds if they are needed. But in the meantime, as a land bank for surface parking and some of the other requirements of the space. So important context here is that the access plan during the development process remains largely the same as what we had described earlier in terms of maintaining the emergency department, which is currently serviced right here in this location. And so the drop-off we would maintain, we would actually reconfigure some of the existing grades here in the topography to make a larger area here and effectively make it such that the existing loading dock, which services the current building, will be accessed from the 5th Street corridor over here. So as a broader graphic that'll illustrate in just a moment what that means, but also, generally the metrics for visits would see most of the traffic here to the north side where it's indicated in blue, about 300 daily vehicular trips, which is directly at the Georgia Avenue corridor and pretty far away from most of the concerns from the community. And then the ambulance trips, which are expected to be roughly about 30, would be in and out from Georgia Avenue, basically as far within this assemblage as is feasible from the local community. And again, in a fully enclosed sort of concrete shell that also has exhaust and other elements that we've mentioned. And then the emergency department, which would front onto the Georgia Avenue corridor, is expected to receive about 100 daily trips as well. So again, none of the metrics change, just their general locations, but also just to highlight that during the construction process, the existing loading dock configuration we need to change in order to accommodate the emergency drop-off in this location. So the cross section remains largely the same. There actually was a little bit more square footage that we were able to gain by shifting the footprint north somewhat to elongate our development site. And this is a graphic of what the rendering, at least at the early concept stage, might look like looking north if you were along the U Street alley. And so we had a dialogue about the mechanical units that are needed to service the surgery floors here and how they would be louvered, as well as, would be louvered only on this small Georgia Avenue facing section. And how sound attenuation and other concerns would be mitigated. Also just highlight that there would be one door on this side of the building that would be required for egress along that facade for the emergency department, the existing emergency department moving forward. So I alluded to a broader diagram that illustrated the necessary sort of traffic pattern shifts that would be needed to accommodate the construction as well as to maintain operations while the hospital is under development. And so we had prior discussed the two-way movement of W Street, which would require the elimination of a parking aisle in order to facilitate that two-way action. But that would basically have all of the major trucks and whatnot that service the hospital via the loading dock travel from Georgia Avenue along W Street down to the intersection of V here, where they would be able to connect in to the rear of the building. So that is, I think, a general highlight. There's also an ability for emergency vehicles to cut down the U Street alley, or sorry, not, I keep referring to this as U Street alley. It's not this this alleyway that's in between our medical arts building and our dental school in order to access it in case of emergency. So there is a possibility for some in and out traffic for emergency vehicles there as well. So yeah, this further illustrates like the construction zone, which is shown hatched in pink, or sorry, purple right here, as well as a temporary ambulance drop off, how that would work, as well as the public parking that would be the surface lot that's at the rear, or as you might call it, the eastern side of the existing hospital complex. So that would be dedicated parking for the public, and then the existing parking garages would actually be reallocated in terms of the number of spaces that accommodate university employees versus other users to highlight and prioritize hospital personnel during the period. So again, that's an important aspect, just managing the overall parking needs of the operation moving forward. Is an important note that we do expect those parking structures to remain and to remain dedicated to hospital uses once the development program has reached its completion. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox and see if there are any questions.
So thank you very much. I do want to get us started with one question. And I think you talked about this at the beginning, but I do just want to clarify for my own brain. But this is, so this is originally the hospital was not going to be standalone? Am I confusing my history here, or?
Well, yeah, I think that there are three iterations here.
Okay.
There's what's in the master plan, which calls for a completely new standalone hospital, albeit on a different site, a site that is further north. The hybrid model came up as the next step in evolution in the process. And ultimately, what we were trying to accomplish on that first step was to achieve this, which is a standalone hospital on the site.
Got it.
That kind of evolved and then pivoted into a hybrid, given some of the considerations of the existing building and its value relative to the overall scheme.
Okay.
So as it stands, this particular iteration, the third and final iteration as we move forward, places a 100% standalone hospital on the site, which would enable us to demolish the existing building. So it's, somewhat similar to how we originally planned, but the site has changed for that, and it fronts it along Georgia Avenue, which was important for a lot of different factors.
And was there something specific that led to the change from the hybrid model to this model, or just like what was?
There are a couple of factors that I'll use, and I'm not sure. Sorry if I cut you off.
That's okay. No. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I will say that first and foremost, we were well on our way design-wise towards a solution that required lots of different points of coordination with utilities, existing site understanding, et cetera. So this site was kind of locked in just from a lot of different perspectives there. So there was a lot of efficiency in terms of pivoting and being able to fit into the footprint. So at the end of it, it was ultimately a cost factor as well as speed, right? And so, the existing building had a certain amount of value because it's a large amount of square footage, but it's not necessarily suited to the sort of operation that a 21st century hospital would require. So ultimately, the judgment call was made to, halt an aggressive reinvestment in that existing building and to focus those dollars on new construction that could gain more energy efficiency and longevity of use. So, again, there are lots of different factors, but I would say that those are kind of driving strategic forces behind the pivot from a hybrid into this. And then again, from a production perspective, we have an architect and a whole team charging ahead on a solution of this footprint. And so with some minor changes to that footprint, we were able to accommodate the square footage that we needed while also threading the needle of the various community concerns and the other concerns that are raised by the different stakeholders in the project.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. I have one additional question, and that is, can you share what the reception to this was at LPC or LDPC? Sorry.
Sure. I think that first and foremost, as I mentioned before, there was sort of a sigh of relief of somewhat, just related to how much we had pre-negotiated about this. And so it was like, oh, well, if then, and we were able to just go through the agreement and understand what we had already kind of discussed and just make sure we were safeguarding for those points. So I think that was, from my perspective, sort of one of the leading points here. I think that change is always an issue, right? And so the pivots back and forth have been a little bit uncomfortable for folks. But again, this brings us back pretty much to where we started, more or less, when we embarked on this entire dialogue with the prospect of a whole new redevelopment of a large amount of acreage adjacent to LaDroit Park. So again, I think that even in the dialogue that we had, there was a, what? Pivot, and then there was in my opinion, sort of an acceptance that we all kind of anticipated that it might be here, might happen. So I don't want to speak too much for the group, but that was my impression. And I'm not sure if Ms. Edmondson had a different perspective.
And Christian, I'm happy to make a quick comment on LaDroit Park's reception too.
That'd be great.
So first, I do want to thank the Howard team for how engaging they have been through this whole process. And when they did pivot to this new proposal, the full replacement hospital with the ultimate demolition of the old hospital, we had an opportunity. The LPCA president and myself had a chance to meet with them to go through a version of this presentation. We then met with our steering committee that we set up a couple of years ago on the Howard University Hospital redevelopment to share kind of the plans, get questions, and understand any concerns. We shared those back with the Howard team. They came and presented to the LPCA meeting at the end of August. And I would say that generally speaking, the community is positive on this. So the idea of having a brand new facility that is closer to Georgia Avenue and allows more development on that parcel of land. I think the general sense is that creates a better use of the space and better integration with LaDroit Park. The MOA that Derek's referenced a couple of times are a series of setbacks and height restrictions that allow for a more gradual transition from a high density mixed use 10 environment or mixed use 9B environment down into a relatively low density RF1 environment. And so we had negotiated all of those essentially, not connected to any particular hospital plan. And so those types of transitions still work and still create ample opportunity for density and new housing stock and a better integration into the community. So the general sense is that we were positive. The one ask that we've made of Howard is just that as they look to extract this parcel from the master plan or the campus plan, that they continue to engage the community. Under the master plan or the campus plan, they're required to engage the community. And so we've asked just for their commitment to continue to engage the community going forward, which I suspect will be the case. So generally speaking, the LaDroit Park has been supportive of this.
Awesome. Thank you. Those were all of my questions. So I will see if any other committee members have questions. All right. I'm seeing none. Does any member of the public who's here have questions? All right. Any comments from committee members? Okay. I don't see any. And I know from your initial email, Teresa, that you were seeking a letter of support from us. And so that would be something that would have to be initiated via motion.
If I may, do you have assistance there?
Yes.
So the case number is Zoning Commission Case 20-08F. The hearing date is on the 20th of October at 4 p.m. and it concerns two parcels that we seek to extract from the master plan, basically the two parcels that comprise the existing hospital lot. And so again, what we are seeking is your support in that case.
Derek, I think you need to enunciate what those two parcels are, please.
Absolutely.
For people who have not read the
again? That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Sure. So parcel 3070 in square number 3075, there's one parcel, which is parcel 0807. And then in square 3074, there's parcel 0011. So those two parcels are effectively the two parcels that the Howard University Hospital and its affiliated buildings sit upon within the district.
What was the first? The first one was.
I was gonna say needs to repeat that because you went too fast and I couldn't write it.
Yeah, no problem. Square 3075.
Yep.
Lot 0807.
Got it.
And then the second one, and let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Is 3074 0011.
Great. Okay, so just to clarify, what the thing that you're asked, the letter of support that you're asking us for is specifically to support the zoning case, which would extract the two parcels you just referenced from the master plan so that you can accomplish the hospital development as you just presented to us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As well as position the land for commercial redevelopment, the adjacent land.
Great.
So basically what they're asking for, Christian, just to
yes.
reaffirm what you just said, is for the ANC to support the zoning case 2008F, which will remove or extract from the current campus plan those parcels, and you need to say the parcel numbers just for clarification, to be able to develop. That's all you need to say in your, whoever makes the motion.
Okay, so I do want to do just one really quick check because I think we've lost a few committee members. And so before we vote, I just want to make sure that we actually have quorum still. I think we do, but I just want to be careful. So right now we have there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 appointed committee members, and there are how many people here? There's
You have 3 committee members, not counting yourself,
yeah, so 4 if you count me.
right?
I
And you
think
only need 3.
yeah, we only need 3. So I think we are at quorum. Good. I didn't want to set us up for an issue if we were not quorum. So is there a committee member who would like to make a motion? And I'm happy to help you. I took down all of that information. I'm happy to help you make the motion.
I'm
I think
going
you're
to
gonna
offer
have
up that it's so easy. I'm on a lot of boards for you just to say so moved.
Patrick, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, it looks like it might fall on you since I technically legally do not have the authority to do it. I would do it if you wanted to.
Great. So I'm happy to make the motion. Okay. So I make the motion that the ZPD committee recommend that the full ANC support the rezoning of the Howard University Hospital in case 20-80-808F to extract 2 parcels. Square and lot numbers are 3075-0807 and 3074-0011 from the campus master plan in order to construct a standalone hospital and preserve
Future development on the site.
future development on the current hospital site.
Very well done, sir.
Thank you. It helps to write it at the same time. Okay, so that is my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, thanks, Alex. Okay, so every committee member who's in favor, please raise your virtual hand. All right, so we have 2, myself, and I don't normally vote, but I'm voting in this case because we're at quorum. Everyone who is opposed. Everyone who is abstaining. All right, so motion carries, 2 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining, and 2 not voting. And that is great. So what we'll do now is
Alex, let's just reconfirm because we want to make sure we're doing this correctly.
yes.
Did Karen vote one way or the other? I didn't see her hand go up.
Oh, Karen did not vote.
Not vote. Okay.
So
you only have 2 other people.
yeah, so there's me, you, Karen, and Alex, who are the committee members who are here. And we need a 3 as our quorum. So if we're not counting you, then that's me, Karen, and Alex.
Okay, that's fine. As long I didn't see what Karen was doing. That's fine. You got
No, Karen didn't vote.
Okay.
I didn't vote yet.
Oh, we just voted. Would you should we retake the vote so that you can?
No, you don't have to retake it. I'm for it, but I didn't. I couldn't. I remember I told you I had a.
That's right. I forgot. Karen.
But it was only I only had the ballot for 1 second, and I'm back. But if you want to, for the record, Do you want to retake the vote? And I apologize, but I'm
As
here.
long as long as you vote, Karen, we just didn't, I wanted to make sure because I didn't see your hand come up and I didn't want him to have, and so if
I
you're,
think
if you're
I think
okay with voting yes, and you acknowledge that, then you got 3, 4, no against, no abstain. So you're fine. I just wanted
Okay.
to make sure
thank
that the record was correct, because I don't want anyone coming back and saying, oh my God, you didn't really have a
yeah,
quorum.
yeah, I appreciate that. And thank you, Karen. I was not paying attention to the time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have remembered that you were.
Right. I told it was just for purposes of me. I'm here present and I just wasn't able to, I had to take a quick phone call, guys. So that was my fault, but I was still in the meeting. I heard everything. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so the motion passes 3 in favor, no opposed, no abstaining. And so what we'll do now is I'll write the letter of support, and that will it'll just include the motion that we just voted on. That will go to the commission. I mean, you are all familiar with this, but that will go to the commission at the October meeting. And it would be great if you could be present then, just because this is in order to discuss the presentation. If the commissioners do have that question, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It is always better to be prepared. And then I will forward if they vote to support the vote in favor of the letter of support. I will forward that to you, and also to the relevant staff in the DC Office of Zoning.
Sarah, can you reaffirm to me? I know I keep asking the same questions all the time, but you know, when you get old, you start losing your mind. What's the date of this hearing? It's October, right?
The 20th.
Yep, October 20th, 4
That's what I
p.m.
thought, but I just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
We'll see you.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. I think that concludes the majority of our business. As I mentioned, we had 2 additional items that are not showing up. There is just a small update about DOB. I will send this via email because I know that there's a lot of us who are not here. But just generally speaking, the Department of Buildings did send us responses to the questions that we had during our July meeting. I mentioned them at the commission meeting earlier this month. They are linked on the website in case you'd like to read them. I think that there is still some community questions about whether or not we want to ask DOB to come to a full ANC meeting. But given the hour and given how many of us there are, I'm happy to postpone that to another time. Is there any new business? All right, I don't see any. I think we can be done for today. Thank you all so much for sticking with it to the end. I know it was kind of a hard day for a lot of us to make this work, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you. As always, Christian. You are always doing a great job. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And I will see you in October.
See you then. Bye.
Everybody.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.